Hi, my name is Chloe. I go to Stanford, and my interests are computer science, tech ethics, public policy, and business. I decided to create this lesson because throughout high school I had many different academic and extracurricular interests, and they were difficult to reconcile to make that spike that everybody talks about in their college admissions. But I want to show that there's value to having many equally strong interests, as well as give you ideas for ways to combine and strengthen them. So in this video, you'll learn how to create a multifaceted personal narrative that you can apply to every aspect of your application. So if you're just starting out your high school career, but you already know that you have interests in many different areas, and you don't know which activities to be involved in for a good application, or if you're already far in your high school career, and you have a bunch of different activities that you don't know how to reconcile, I want to offer some guidance for picking the activities to put on your app. So in my application for Stanford, I wanted to make sure that I showed my many sides as an applicant. However, in order to show my admissions officer that I had many distinct interests that motivated me, rather than showing that I was like a mixed bag of interests with no direction, I identified some themes that were present in my activities. So for me, that was computer science, linguistics, volunteering and human outreach, and also teamwork and leadership. So I made sure to put mostly activities that I was engaged with for several years, unless it was a selective activity that I was involved in for a short duration, like an internship. Because admissions officers want to see that you stick with activities for a while, since this shows commitment and a genuine interest in that activity. If you already know which themes you want to show your admissions officer, I recommend making a list of all of the extracurriculars that relate to every theme. So for example, I had computer science, volunteering, etc. And then for every activity that I was involved in throughout high school, I would place it into the list with the theme that it relates to. So activities can be present in like 2 separate lists, 2 or more. And that's actually a really good thing because it shows that you're able to incorporate many of your passions into the things that you do. So for example, in a club where I taught middle schoolers the basics of computer science, I would place this under the computer science, leadership, volunteering, etc., all those different lists. And then on the other hand, if you don't really know what themes are present yet, just start with one list of all of the activities that you've done in high school. And from there, just, read over it and try to figure out what unites them. So ask yourself what drew you to participate in them in the first place. Once you've made these lists, I recommend choosing the 10 activities that you've been involved with for the longest, and that relate to the most amount of themes. And I think that these are the best because they show dedication. They also show that you're able to incorporate many of your passions into the activities that you do, which signals to your admissions officers that if they admit you, you'll actually take advantage of the opportunities on campus with your unique approach to academics and extracurriculars that you exhibit through these unique combination of themes. And when filling out the extracurricular section of your application, make sure that you're describing the activities in compelling ways. My advice is to describe your contribution to the activity using active words and statistics that don't repeat any information, and make sure to highlight the theme that the activity aligns with. So for example, in the club that I mentioned where I introduced middle schoolers to computer science, because I had so few characters to describe it, I put my role as founder and president in the position box, and I didn't repeat that in the description, but instead I wrote that I created a curriculum to teach middle schoolers the basics of Scratch and HTML and algorithms. I also wrote that I scaled the club from 8 to 18 people in the first year, and that I retained 90% of students yearly, which shows rather than tells that I'm a leader because I took initiative and used creativity in designing the curriculum. And it also shows that I'm a good teacher who's able to get others excited about computer science because of the high retention rate. So even though the club wasn't huge, it made an impact on at least a few dozen people, which is what my admissions officer was really looking for. And in fact, in my personal note from the admissions officer, which I'll read at the end of the video, he noted that my leadership in volunteering and mentorship roles was a huge deal for him. So if you need help finding activities that align with the themes that you want to show your officer, I always recommend creating your own. For example, starting a club, organization, or even like a specialized team within an organization you already work with. That will demonstrate leadership, creativity, initiative, and hopefully it'll align with one or more of the themes that you identified. And if working with others isn't your thing, you can always embark on a new project, such as writing a book about a topic that excites you, or enroll in a program to learn about something that aligns with the themes that you want to write about. However, make sure that you note that there's a separate place to write about coursework on your application. So if you're looking for more extracurriculars, it should be a more engaging and hands-on program, such as a fellowship or an internship rather than extra coursework. And even though scoring an internship may seem hard, you should use your network of teachers, family members, friends, and anyone else. Because in my experience, few people will say no if you offer free help in exchange for a learning opportunity. Finally, if you have other financial or family obligations that limit what you can do with your time, I recommend incorporating your interests into those existing obligations. So like if you have to spend your time babysitting, for example, consider reading books or watching movies, your interests with the children, and then when you describe it on the application, you can say that every week you explored a new topic related to blank, which is the interest that you have. And this shows your ability to think outside the box in order to pursue your passions. You can also ask your teachers if they can help you find any other opportunities related to your interests, and most of your teachers will be so thrilled that you want to keep learning about what they teach in the classroom. So for example, when I asked one of my former computer science teachers where I could go to learn more about artificial intelligence, he recommended some books for me to read, and then every week we would discuss a few chapters or talk about some articles with a friend that I convinced to join us. And then when I eventually listed this activity on my application, I made sure to highlight that the 3-person book club was started by me and was for fun. And this shows my intellectual vitality, which was a big deal for Stanford. My second piece of advice is about building academic experience in many disciplines, but I want to note that different schools might look for specific academic profiles depending on how specialized the program is. So like if you're a STEM student, it might not be beneficial to have a bunch of arts experience. But one thing that I was looking for in schools was academic flexibility. I knew that I didn't want to take a core curriculum, like a very strict core curriculum like I did in high school, because I wanted to spend my time taking classes that really interested me. So Stanford was really perfect for me because while there are a few graduation requirements, such as for writing, I could choose from a huge array of classes to fulfill these. I think like 30 different classes to fulfill the writing requirement. So this academic flexibility was something that I actually noted in my Why Stanford mini essay. And in order to demonstrate my interests in many disciplines, from language to writing to computer science, I made sure that my high school classes also reflected that. So I made sure that throughout high school, I was in the hardest classes possible that I could handle. It's important to note that it's much better to consistently get A's and maybe a few B's than consistently struggle in hard classes. So in 11th and 12th grade, when I was in the International Baccalaureate program, which is basically like a curriculum with college level classes similar to AP, I had a bit more freedom in what classes I could take. So I was in computer science, history, language and literature, and math at the highest level offered at my school, and in the IB program, it's called the IB high level courses. And I also took Spanish and chemistry at the standard level, which were still among the hardest classes at my school because the IB is an extremely rigorous program. And I made sure that I chose classes that were interesting to me. And also, it's interesting to see how my higher level classes happen to be 2 STEM classes, computer science and math, and 2 humanities courses, history and language and literature, which I didn't do on purpose, but it does go to show that I am evenly split between STEM and humanities, and even the standard level classes were lab science and language. And I believe that Stanford just wants to see that you're pushing yourself academically in the context of your school. So this means that if there are no college level classes offered at your school, you're not going to be disadvantaged if you still take the hardest classes because you didn't have the opportunity to do so. However, this doesn't mean that there isn't anything that you can do to put yourself ahead even if you are doing the highest level classes. Because even when I couldn't choose my classes in 9th and 10th grade, I did summer programs at highly competitive colleges such as Columbia and Harvard University. And colleges like this offer financial aid for summer programs, which can be a game changer for some people. You should definitely look into that. Additionally, depending on what school you attend for college, you might be able to transfer in that credit, although I know Stanford is not really flexible with things like that, so I wouldn't count on it. But when you're looking for programs like this, I definitely recommend looking for credit anyways, regardless of whether or not you might be able to transfer it in, because it allows your admissions officer to kind of gauge how difficult the course is. So for example, I know at Columbia, they offer a 3-week program for high school students, but they don't grant credit, and it's mostly an opportunity to explore the campus and the city and just see the school rather than dive into the academic subject, which is less rigorous and doesn't really show much about you as a student. So in my opinion, the focus of your extra classes should be where your application is lacking. So I thought I wanted to do engineering in 9th and 10th grade, but I knew I could not handle physics for 2 years in the IB, which was super difficult. But I didn't want to just apply with 9th and 10th grade physics classes because they weren't as hard as my other classes. So I did a Stanford online physics class to show, for college credit, to show that I was able to handle physics at a college level. But I also took things that were interesting to me, such as entrepreneurship courses with UCSD, which one of my teachers recommended to me because I wanted to show that I could successfully launch a nonprofit while demonstrating an ability to learn about business in an academic setting. And in other words, although I decided to take a class to show I'm a good student, I specifically chose some of the topics because they aligned with my interests, and they really kind of went with that comprehensive picture that I'm trying to build for my admissions officer. So I just want to read my personal admissions letter to show you how it relates to all the advice I have been giving. So he said, "Chloe, I'm so excited to write you this note. You've made an incredible impact on so many levels. Your work revolves around lifting others up through Sustainable Start, Kids Who Code, and New York Common Pantry, which are different volunteering activities I was involved with." He says, "You blended the science and humanities to think critically and comprehensively about tough societal issues." And so this shows how he really values that I'm an interdisciplinary learner. And he just goes on to talk more about like specific details that my teacher said, such as I was a linguophile, but I also excelled in math and STEM subjects. So he really values that I was able to kind of bridge my passions into, courses and activities that showed who I was as a unique applicant with my unique combination of interests. So yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions on how to make your particular application solid and kind of show this comprehensive picture of who you are, I am also open to reviewing individual applications, which you can do through this site. And if you're interested in seeing how my essays also relate to the pieces of advice that I've been giving, that's also available on this site. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this class.